unions. Please give it up for Ms. Helen Kelly.
Kia ora koutou, it's fantastic to see you all here. It's a sad thing that we have to be here to once again defend the most basic rights that we rely on to go to work and to try and get a fair deal. Before I start, I want to send apologies from both the Labour and Green caucus. The Parliament is sitting under urgency. They would have been here, but they've been called back to try and stop the government doing its dirty deals. And we've got a special apology from two contenders for the Labour Party leadership, David Cunliffe and Grant Robertson, who were booked to come, decided they'd be a distraction. Today is about the government's bill to cut your pay, and they wanted to make sure that's what the media focused on. And that's exactly what the government is trying to do. It is passing legislation its own papers say will allow employers to drive wages down. And you have to ask, who would do that? Who would do that at this time when only a couple of weeks ago 50% of New Zealanders said they worry every week whether they're going to be able to pay their bills or not? 50%. When 2 out of 5 children in this country living below the poverty line are in homes where at least one person is working full-time or is self-employed. Who would cut wages now? Only a government that doesn't serve working people, only a government that doesn't understand how tough it is out there, and only a government that doesn't care about you. Now, my job is to tell you what those changes are, and I'm going to go through them. There are 3 that relate to the bargaining, big ones, but there are 2 that sit outside that. One of them is the removal of the security of employment for our most vulnerable hero workers, the cleaners and the caterers in this country who have the protection when the contractor they work for changes, when a building owner or a hospital or a school decides to change the contract, the current protection for their employment security that sees them move over to the new contractor is being removed if the employer has less than 20 staff that comes in and gets that job. And that is a direct attack on the lowest paid heroes that clean every day our hospitals, our schools, our buildings, an absolute attack on their security of employment and has to be stopped. The second change, do you know what this government's doing with this legislation? It is getting rid of the tea break and the lunch break entitlement. Yeah, you have to ask, don't you, what did the cabinet discussion look like when they decided to do that? Who had that bright idea? Who had the idea, I know, let's teach those workers a lesson, let's put them in their place, let's get rid of their tea break and their lunch break. That change is designed to humiliate working people, and it's totally unfair, and most New Zealanders will be very, very concerned to hear that this government would stoop so low. And then there are 3 big changes to the bargaining, and you need to understand these because these are designed to ensure that wages are decreased. The first one is that the government is changing the obligation of your employer in bargaining to settle a collective agreement. So when your union seeks to bargain and they go into the negotiations and they bargain in good faith, both parties are there to settle. The current law requires them to walk out of that room with a collective agreement in place unless there are genuine reasons not to. And the government's removing that. The duty to conclude, they're taking it out so that your employer can turn up to the bargaining, do all the nice things, smile, agree with everything that you're talking about, but say, actually, we want individual employment agreements, we don't want a collective here, and we're not going to conclude. That's change number 1. Change number 2. At the moment, new workers that come into your workplace are offered the collective for the first 30 days of employment, and that protects them when they're vulnerable. They can't be paid less. They don't know yet that there's a union that will look after them. They can go onto the collective for the first 30 days and then decide whether they want to join the union or not and join the collective. And the government is removing that, and they are saying this will enable employers to offer new workers lower pay, and we know that is exactly what they will do. And then there'll be a split in the workforce, those that are on the collective and those vulnerable new workers who have signed individual agreements on different terms and conditions. So no duty to conclude, no obligation to offer new workers for the agreement for the first 30 days. And the last change is the real kicker. The last change, if the employer decides they don't want to conclude, they can go to the court and they can get an order that the bargaining is finished. And if the court orders that the bargaining is finished, that collective agreement, currently runs on for a year after it expires, which gives your union a chance to get in there and try and renegotiate it. Well, under the proposed changes, if the court orders that the collective bargaining is concluded, then the collective that you're on disappears completely, and all of you go on to individual employment agreements. And then, that's right, and then the government's creating what it calls a grace period. Well, we call it a free hit period, a period of 60 days after the court says the bargaining's concluded, where you're not allowed to bargain anymore, you're not allowed to strike, you're not on your collective agreement, and the employer can come out and pick workers off one at a time, threatening their pay and conditions and getting them to sign individual employment agreements. So the three things: no conclusion, no 30 days, and the 60-day kick workers when they're down provision are all in this bill alongside the tea break and the removal of employment security. And it's wrong. It's wrong to do this at this time to the working people of this country. You contribute to this economy and you deserve to be respected. Now, the CTU has got 4 goals for this campaign. Firstly, to try and stop this bill. That's going to be tough because I've got slimy people in their government like Peter Dunn who are going to vote this through to hang on to his leadership aspirations, but also a government that doesn't care and is trying to push this legislation through. The second goal, our goal is to promote different employment law, good employment law that allows everybody in this country to collectively bargain and get pay increases and be in unions and collectively organise and all of those other things. So we want to use this opportunity to promote good employment law. The third goal is to make sure that working people understand these changes and understand that we've got a government that doesn't care about them leading into the next election, and the next goal is to change this government to a government that does care. Thank you very much.
Kia ora and thank you, Helen. Our next speaker is a delegate from the Service and Food